What if I told you that a broken stone found in the Jordanian desert confirmed an event mentioned in the Bible? This is the Mesha Stele, also known as the Moabite Stone. It's not just old, but it's also loud in its inscriptions. Written by King Mesha of Moab in the 9th century BCE, this thing brags about a rebellion, names a few biblical kings, and even shouts out the Israelite god, Yahweh. It is one of the earliest mentions of the name outside the Bible. And the interesting part is that it lines up pretty well with a fiery passage in 2 Kings chapter 3. This 3,000-year-old stone doesn't just tell us about any ordinary moment, but an uprising that echoed through both history and biblical scripture. So let's break it down. Who found it, what it says, and why it's still fascinating historians. Let's start with its discovery. Here's where things get wild. Back in 1868, a missionary named Frederick Klein was wandering around the ancient ruins of Dibon, modern-day Jordan. Here he spots something unusual, a giant black basalt stone standing upright, covered in ancient script. At first, no one quite knows what it is, but once word spreads to European scholars and collectors, it's chaos. Everyone wants it. The Ottoman authorities try to claim it, and local Bedouin tribes realize this rock is suddenly valuable. And then, because colonial powers can't help themselves, French and German diplomats get involved too. There's even a full-on bidding war. Now here's the kicker. During all this drama, the locals smash the stone into pieces and scatter them. In an attempt to protect their claim, the whole thing gets broken on purpose. The stone is shattered into dozens of fragments. Some were lost, others scattered across the region. For a while, it looked like the entire inscription might be gone for good, a case of history slipping through our fingers. Thankfully for the others, a French scholar named Charles Clermont-Ganneau had already made a papier-mâché squeeze of the inscription before it was destroyed. That copy, plus later reconstruction of the fragments, is what saved the text for modern scholars. Today, those fragments are housed mostly in the Louvre Museum. It is still being studied by epigraphers. Without quick thinking, we'd have almost nothing today. So the Mesha Stele barely survived. But its words did. And they turned out to be game-changing. What exactly did King Mesha carve into this big old rock? Turns out it's a victory inscription. Written in Moabite, a language super close to ancient Hebrew, the stone tells King Mesha's version of a major rebellion against the Israelites. Mesha makes himself the hero. He kicks it off by saying his god, Chemosh, was angry with Moab, so Israelites took control of the land. But then he claims Chemosh looked at Moab favorably again. Mesha says he led a successful rebellion, driving out the Israelites and reclaiming lost territory. One line stands out. Omri, king of Israel, oppressed Moab for many days, but I triumphed. That directly connects to the Bible's 2 Kings 3, where Mesha is described rebelling against Israelites after King Ahab's death.
Moabite stone that dates back to 840 BC was found in Jordan in 1868 near the Dead Sea. Scholars believed the text, written in an extinct Moabite language, described events in the Old Testament Book of Kings. It includes phrases like House of David and the Altar of David. Damage to the stone obscured parts of the text, making it hard to confirm.
What's even more remarkable is that the stone actually names Omri, mentions the House of David, and even names Yahweh. That last one is huge, as it's one of the earliest known references to Yahweh outside of the Bible. So not only does the Mesha Stele confirm a biblical event, but it does so from Moab's perspective, making it incredibly rare. Most inscriptions from the time only tell one side of the story, but here we get the biblical version and the Moabite version. That's what makes the stone so important. It bridges archaeology, history, and religious scripture in one artifact. It's one of the earliest pieces of archaeological evidence that directly confirms people, places, and events from the Bible. We're talking about a non-Israelite source mentioning King Omri, the House of David, and even the name Yahweh. This is huge for both historians and also religious scholars. And the stone doesn't just name drop, it confirms that Israelites had real power over Moab during Omri's reign. That's not just a claim from the Bible, it's now backed by an external source. What makes it all even more fascinating is the unique perspective it offers. The Bible's version in 2 Kings 3 says the rebellion didn't exactly go King Mesha's way, as the Israelites launched a military campaign in response. But in Mesha's inscription, he paints himself as the clear winner. So we've got two versions of the same conflict, each side claiming victory. This clash of perspectives is rare in ancient history. Usually all we get is one voice, whether true or false. The Mesha Stele gives us a second, non-Israelite account, which helps historians compare sources, piece together what likely happened, and understand the political spin on each side. In that way, the Mesha Stele is like an ancient version of competing news coverage, each side trying to frame the same event through their lens, shaped by politics, power, and faith. Also, the reference to Yahweh shows that even the Israelites' enemies acknowledged the God of Israel by name, suggesting that the Israelite religion was already well established and recognized. That kind of acknowledgement from a rival nation is rare, and it shows just how well-known Israel's God had become, even in enemy records. One broken stone, tons of insight. Now let's tie this all back to the Bible, specifically 2 Kings 3, 4-5. Here's what it says. Now Mesha king of Moab was a sheep breeder, and he had to deliver to the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. That's the setup. Moab was basically paying tribute to ancient Israel, a massive amount of sheep and wool. But once Ahab dies and his son Jehoram takes over, Mesha decides it's time to break free. The Bible then describes how Israel teams up with Judah and Edom to crush the rebellion. They march through the desert, lay siege to Moab, and things get messy. At one point, Mesha even sacrifices his son on the city wall, which shocks everyone and causes the Israelite alliance to retreat. So, in the biblical version, Israel puts up a serious fight. In Mesha's version, as on the stone, he wins outright and restores Moab's land. Two sides, same war, slightly different outcomes. But the fact that both sources reference the same basic chain of events, tribute, rebellion, and conflict, makes this one of the clearest biblical correlations in archaeology. It's not just that the stories match, it's that they overlap in just enough detail to prove they're talking about the same moment in history. That is incredibly rare. So what did we get from this broken, 3,000-year-old stone buried in Jordan? A moment where archaeology and religious scripture shake hands. The Mesha Stele isn't just some dusty artifact. It's a direct voice from the past. King Mesha himself putting his version of events in stone.
The text, there it is right there. That's a good zoom in for you guys that can't see what I'm pointing to up here on the front row. The Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, again, right to left, and there's those periods that mark the end of the words.
It backs up parts of 2 Kings, mentions Israelite kings, the God of Israel, and shows that even in the ancient world, people were telling their side of the story loud and clear. And somehow, through all the drama, destruction, and reconstruction, his message survived. Pretty amazing for a rock. In a time when oral tradition was the norm, carving words into stone meant permanence. Mesha wanted his version remembered, and somehow, despite everything, he got his wish. If you like this breakdown and want more stories where archaeology meets ancient text, make sure to stick around. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comment section.